Hello and welcome to Bourbon Rocks. Tonight we're going to review Colonel E.H. Taylor Small Batch Bottled in Bond. So the Taylor line of bourbons from Buffalo Trace come from mash bill number 1, which is the low rye mash bill, about 10 to 12% rye. It's not actually stated, but that's what most people tend to believe, but it is the low rye mash bill. It is bottled in bond, so that means it's going to be 100 proof. And it's non-age stated, but it's thought to be around 6 to 8 years of age. And I wanted to remember to do that at the beginning of the video last time when we reviewed the single barrel version of E.H. Taylor. I forgot to mention the age at the beginning. Because these videos are completely unedited. I do this all in one take. I don't read off of cue cards. I don't read from a teleprompter. So if I make a mistake, I'll correct myself because this is all one take, straight up videos just for you on Bourbon Rocks. But anyway, did want to tell you from the very beginning. So this is bottled in bond, so we know it has to be 100 proof, but it's about 6 to 8 years of age, which is about what the barrel proof was that we also reviewed. Now the single barrel is thought to be around 7 to 12 years, so most of them around 10 years. We were guessing that the single barrel was around 10 years. Of course, also non-age stated, so you don't know exactly how old it is, but 7 to 12 years, around 10 years is for the single barrel. The small batch was around 6 to 8 years, which is the same as the barrel proof. Barrel proof being the only E.H. Taylor bourbon that is not bottled in bond. Can't be because it's barrel proof, but bottled bond means it has to be 100 proof. So this is the E.H. Taylor, Colonel E.H. Taylor, it's a Kentucky Colonel, small batch that we're going to try now. What we want to do on Bourbon Rocks now is to try to do some bourbons that are a little more affordable, are more daily drinkers. We started out with some very expensive high-end bourbons. Part of that was just so you could see what Bourbon Rocks had to offer. But it was never intended to be an elitist channel. We do want to do daily drinkers. The only thing about E.H. Taylor, like most of Buffalo Trace, is that there's still that amazing hype around Buffalo Trace, which means that most Buffalo Trace products are going to fly off the shelves very rapidly. This is an easier to acquire release. It does come out several times per year, so it will hit your liquor store if you're lucky enough to get there when they're opening the box, or if you have a drop in your state, depending on where you shop for liquor. But it is more accessible, and even if you buy it on the internet, it's going to be less expensive. More expensive than in the store, but less expensive than a lot of the higher end bourbons. So this is what we're considering a daily drinker if you can acquire it. So let's see if it performs as a daily drinker. E.H. Taylor Small Batch. In our E.H. Taylor Glencairn glass. Now we just reviewed the single barrel, and we're going to immediately want to compare the single barrel to the small batch to see if the single barrel is better. You got to keep in mind with single barrels, they can vary because they're single barrels, so every single one of them is going to taste slightly different. But I think there's a whole lot more put to that statement than really it deserves. Everyone says, single barrels are going to vary so much because they're single barrels. But the master distiller is looking for a certain flavor profile when he picks these barrels. So even though that's true that every barrel is slightly different, there's still going to be a very small range, because if it's completely out of line, they're not going to bottle it as an E.H. Taylor single barrel. They're going to find, some other mash bill number 1 product they can put it in. They can let it go, the full 10 years and put it into an Eagle Rare, for example. So there's a little bit of a difference between the single barrels. But the single barrel compared to the small batch ought to taste better, theoretically. It's aged a bit longer. So we'll see what happens. We're going to first just review the small batch, and then I'll kind of give you some thoughts compared to the previous video that I did with the single barrel. Anyway, so we look at the color first. And again, it's got that golden sunshine, light orange type color, very, very pretty color. The body is not as thick as the single barrel. It's a little bit thinner, medium body, but a little bit thinner than you have with the single barrel. It's not quite as old. The nose, interesting. A little bit of like a light cocoa here. That I wouldn't have anticipated. The oak is there. It's amazing. This is not aged as long as the single barrel, but I'm getting a little more oak. Not so much a char. Buffalo Trace claims that most of the time they use a number 4 char or alligator char. But I would wonder in this whether, that's what they say, but this one doesn't really taste all that charred to me. It almost tastes more like an oak, like a wooden toothpick. You get the woody scent, but it doesn't really have a lot of char to it. Maybe even a little cedar, interesting, like a cedar plank that you grill some fish on. It's not fruity. If there's any fruit to this, it might be in a little bit of prune, maybe a little bit of pruniness. But it's interesting. It's cocoa, and it's very, very woody, not fruity. All right, let's see what it tastes like. There's a little nuttiness in here, like some almond, peanutty. You kind of get that out of the Jim Beams a lot. But I got some nutty flavors. It's spicy. It's obviously a rye bourbon, unlike the Wellers and the Pappies that we've done that were very, very fruity from the wheat. This is definitely more spicy, allspice. It's almost just a little bit of perfuminess to it. There's some sweetness following the spice, like powdered sugar. There's a little bit of fruit, maybe some berries, but it's not heavy on the fruit. Same as the single barrel. It's definitely more spicy and the sweet, but there's a little bit of nuttiness to it, and that just woodiness. Let's see what we get on the second sip. It's a lot thinner than the single barrel. The finish is not as long. It's still a little warm. Bottled and Bond, 100 proof. It's about a medium finish, not nearly as long. The single barrel had that very long, spicy, warm finish that carried through for 10-15 seconds or so. This one fades away much quicker. Not nearly as long and as thick as the single barrel. Much thinner here. Still got some spice in it. Still got some sweetness. Very, very light on the fruit. Again, maybe some pruny or a little bit of berry. But that interesting little nuttiness, I think, that I didn't pick out of the single barrel. So I'm going to give the small batch a Jack, which means it's a daily drinker. Okay, so this is, if you can acquire this, it's still going to be allocated, so it's going to still be a little bit hard to find, but it does come out a lot more frequently than some of the elite bourbons that we've reviewed. So you can acquire this, and even if you do pay for it on the internet at internet prices, it's going to be more expensive, but not not incredibly expensive. Definitely more affordable. So if you can get your hands on this E.H. Taylor a small batch, I think it definitely is a daily drinker, but it's not going to wow you. The single barrel is a much better pick if you can get it. It's also a little bit rare, and it's also more expensive, but it does have a lot more full-bodied flavor this just runs a little bit thin, but it's a great daily drinker. I would absolutely say, by all means, keep some small batch E.H. Taylor around. It's a very good bourbon. And that's a review of Colonel E.H. Taylor small batch. Check us out on bourbonrocks.com or as you have on YouTube. Thank you very much.